Okay, I don't see anybody else waiting to come in, so I think we're okay to go ahead and get started.
Sure.
Um, so I'll introduce myself first. My name is Jessica Kirschbaumer, and I am President and Communications Chair of the Alberta Horse Trials Association. We've been putting on these online education webinars for a couple of years now, and April has done a few for us and has always had a really good turnout, and they've been really excellent. So we're very excited to have her back again. And I'd also like to thank Kathleen, who is also on the HTA Board of Directors. She is our athlete development chair, and she runs our high performance program. And she is the one who has organized this talk for us, which is very awesome. We're getting more people talking in the chat. We have Saskatchewan, BC, Nova Scotia. That's awesome.
Nova Scotia.
Yeah,
Awesome.
sweet. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I guess I'll turn it over to you, April. You can introduce yourself, and then we can get rolling with your discussion.
Okay. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for being resilient. Well, those of you who are in Alberta and staying home and through the snow and coming here, at least in Calgary, we have a lot of snow. So I'm April Clay, and I am a psychologist who works in private practice, and I am a former competitive rider. So I've worked with riders within sports psychology for a lot of years, and I love working with the AHTA. It's been fun every year that we do it, and we always have a good crowd and good discussions. So really looking forward to this tonight. So tonight we are going to talk about Bend It Like Gumby. Hopefully most of you do know who Gumby is. I think he's pretty well-known green guy. How to up your resilience factor. And I know that Jessica has put up a few polls for you. Jessica, I don't know if you have any, like, what kind of responses you have to this first question of, do you think you're resilient? Oh, 100%. Oh, I see. Okay, we're adding. Okay, so looks like first question, we've got about 75% of you who do think that you are resilient. I asked that because resilience can be, whoops, I was just trying to get rid of the poll there. There. Resilience can be a confusing concept. It's lumped in a lot with other constructs like mental toughness or grit. So sometimes asking yourself, are you resilient? You're not sure exactly what you're asking of yourself. You might have had people, coaches, other people say, yes, you are resilient, or no, you're not in this situation. So I find it can be a confusing concept to get a hold of. But looks like most of you tonight do think that you're resilient, which is good. Oops, why isn't that? Okay. So first question, what does the face of resilience look like? So when you look at all of these faces, some of them sad, some of them freaking out, some of them crying, some of them depressed, angry, can all of these be resilience? What do you think of when you think of resilience? I think a lot of times that we do associate a certain emotion or a set of emotions with resilience. And we're going to kind of come back to this question of what does the face of resilience really look like near the end? But for now, just kind of think to yourself, what do I associate with resilience? What kind of emotions? What does the face of resilience look like to me? Okay. For tonight, we are going to kind of anchor ourselves in a definition of resilience. So sporting resilience is a person's, ability to use skills and resources when faced with adversity, to maintain functioning and to successfully adapt to persist and to learn from the experience. So this definition comes from an amalgamation of several research definitions that are current. Oops, now I've got to, sorry for moving this around. Okay. And the question is it the same as mental toughness? And on that note, Jessica, what is that poll saying?
Resilience, the same as mental toughness. 50% said yes. Oh no, I lied. 100% said no. Sorry.
Oh, 100% said no.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a good chunk of people.
It only looks like there's 4 people that have the poll.
Okay.
So it says 50% had answered.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at this. Is resilience the same as mental toughness? The short answer is they are very related, but they're different. So a mental toughness, common definition is the ability to perform well under pressure, to stay focused and maintain a positive mindset in challenging situations. Resilience, definition, capacity to bounce back from adversity, adapt to change, and recover quickly from difficult experiences. Mental toughness associated with persistence, determination, focus, there's that word, grit, self-discipline. Resilience associated more with adaptability, flexibility, like Gumby, emotional strength, coping skills, and optimism. We can develop mental toughness through practice, facing challenges, and building different mental skills. And with resilience, we can cultivate this through adversity, learning from setbacks, and developing coping strategies. So a different set of mental skills. Mental toughness is, of course, useful in high pressure situations, competitive environments, and achieving long-term goals. Resilience, yes, we also think of as useful in high pressure situations, but also useful in coping with life's and sports ups and downs, overcoming trauma, and maintaining well-being. So these concepts are very tightly woven, yes, but they are a little bit different. Resilience is more about dealing with adversity and being able to maintain a certain level of skill through that and get through that. It is possible to have mental toughness and not resilience. So for example, a person might be really well prepared and really well versed in their mental skills training, but not have been exposed to much adversity and not really have trained for setbacks, and so not have a lot of resilience. And by the same measure, you can have a person with a lot of resilience, so a lot of that ability to just bounce back from anything, but maybe not as much mental toughness. And so maybe not as many mental skills, as much focus in and determination in a certain way of training. But certainly that you can see that they are very related, and that you could say that the best combo is to have both of them, to strive for both of them. But I think it's helpful to distinguish that that they really are different. And I think, Jessica, from that poll, you were saying that people do believe that they're different. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that was the consensus. And I
Okay.
was just going to say quickly, for anybody who didn't see the poll earlier, I'm going to relaunch it. And if you could just quickly go through, and it's just 9 quick yes or no's, just because the last part haven't had answers yet. If anybody can see the poll, and if you wanted to quickly just fill it out as we're going, that will be helpful when we get to those.
Okay. And sorry, Jessica, I'm moving around the video portion here.
Oh, it does. No,
Can you-
Zoom locks it when they're recording, so you can put it wherever you want. I can't tell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. That is very good to know. Okay. Let's move on then. So you can see me, because I can't see me anymore, but that's okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. So moving on to what kind of situations call for resilience from us. And in some of the research, they look at, well, it really, it's trauma or it's acute situations where people need the resilience to be able to get through. And then there's another section of the research that says, no, it's both, right? It's the acute and the emergent kind of situations, plus it's the ability to be resilient on a day-to-day basis with day-to-day stressors. And I'm going to say that I agree with the latter, that I think both of these situations, kinds of situations, call for resilience. It's not just one or the other. Okay, so what kind of typical situations, let's take a look at, are we looking at in terms of calling on our resilience? Injury, this obviously could be horse or rider. This is a big one, whoever's gone through it, and there's probably a lot of you out there that have. Injury is something that definitely calls on our resilience to be able to rehabilitate through sometimes, and to pick up and start all over again. Setbacks of any kind. This could be things like setbacks in terms of being able to show, it could be not enough funds, it could be not the proper equipment, it could be all kinds of things depending on the person. So situations that require resilience really are very individual. What one person's looks like is going to be different from the others. Intense competition. So when you find yourself in a group of riders that very well matched to you, and the competition is really stiff, that can call for resilience in bringing out your skills. External challenges, this could be anything from family issues to mental health issues to anything at all that interferes or compromises your ability to dedicate your time to your sport, or temporarily sort of dislodges you from your target, your goals. Adaptation to change, well, we sure saw this during the pandemic because we all needed a lot of resilience in the world to get through it. And I would say that we are still on the tail end of that. But certainly while it was going on for horse sport, we saw people go from not being able to ride to doing online shows, learning how to do that, to learning how to show in environments with masks, without masks, and everything in between. So we were called on, certainly our capacity for resilience, to deal with all of the adaptations that came with COVID, and we still continue to deal with some of those. Okay, ways to be more Gumby-esque. And like I said, I'm gonna assume that most of you here do know who Gumby is. A pretty popular, stretchy green guy, but let's go into a little further about why I chose him. He is certainly and has been a figure that is associated with flexibility because he's stretchy and you could do whatever to him and he comes back into the same shape as a toy. But he has also taken on a real representation of what it means to be flexible and what it means to persist. So as a result, he is an official motto of the U.S. Marine Corps. And you see here the emblem says Semper Gumby, and Semper is Latin for Italian, or I'm sorry, Latin for always, not Italian. So in other words, that means always flexible. So Semper Gumby, always flexible. And by the way, he's actually a motto and incorporated into a lot of different military and other organizations in the US. I'm not sure about Canada, but he not only represents flexibility, but apparently he really represents being a good guy, a good friend, someone that will always have your back. and who kind of lives by his values. So he is a really interesting representation, I think, of resilience. So there you go. Semper Gumby. That's where that comes from. And by the way, I think he's about 60 years old. I think he had his 60th birthday not long ago. So there's Gumby. Okay, so let's look at some ways to be a little bit more Gumby-esque or flexible. And the first is to anticipate setbacks and prepare accordingly. So essentially what this means is developing a mindset that expects negative experiences or challenges will be part of the game. So anticipating setbacks instead of anticipating perfection or anticipating that you're always going to be comfortable. And this is sort of the first key about becoming more resilient, is taking a look at your mindset. Because I think a lot of riders and other types of athletes, certainly people in general, we get caught in these expectations about, well, I trained hard, I did everything I was supposed to do. What do you mean this thing went wrong? And when it does, it really derails us because we haven't considered it to be part of our game. So you need to consider challenges to be part of your learning experience, not something that happens and drags you outside of your sporting life. So you're expecting some of it to come your way. And as such, when something does come your way, it's sort of as simple as a mindset of, I knew you were coming. I knew you were coming, so I did some preparation. And as far as that goes, what are the likely setbacks that you can include in your planning? And I will stick in a caveat here about if you are an anxious type of person or a person that is prone to what if kind of thinking, that this kind of exercise is probably safer to do with like a coach or with a trusted friend, because it's easy for us when we're in an anxious mindset, if you're prone to anxiety, which, right, a lot of people are, to get too far into the weeds with the what ifs, because let's face it, we can go right to infinity and beyond with our what ifs. And what we need is kind of a boundary around that what if, like what are the likely things that can happen? So things like, yeah, it's likely that I might have to go into the ring sooner than I think. It's likely that the weather's not going to be to my liking. It's could be likely that my coach is not available when I need him or her. Things like this, and knowing what you would do in a situation like that. Practicing strength spotting in previous and in current challenges. So I would encourage you all to, after or at some point after you listen to this talk tonight, to go home and to make a list of all of the adverse situations you've already been through in your sport. So just make a list of them and then ask yourself what you used, what kinds of strengths you used to get through those experiences. And this is something I don't think we really do enough of. You know, we're kind of relieved when the stress is over. But so take a look at those past challenging moments and what strengths within yourself you had to call upon. And then take a look at a current challenge that you have on your plate and see if any of those past strengths apply. And also ask yourself, well, what could I be doing? What am I doing well already? Because again, a lot of times this is missed by us, and it's understandable because when we're dealing with challenge, usually we are in some degree of an anxious state of mind, and an anxious state of mind brings with it looking for threats, looking for different threats. We're not really inclined to stop and look at our strengths. So we have to do that deliberately and pull them out. So I think it's a nice thing to, like I said, to go home and do tonight and see how that turns out for you, and to start to get to know what your strengths are and what you've used in the past. can be really helpful. Okay. Expose yourself to stress.
April,
Well,
sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
You had two questions that went with these two slides, two
Oh,
poll questions.
okay.
We had like 24 people fill out the poll, so we have many more responses.
Okay.
So number 4 was, are you aware of your strengths?
Mm-hmm.
91% said yes, and 9% said no.
And 90% said no? Oh,
Just
sorry.
9% said
Oh,
no.
9%. Okay.
So 91
Something
for
with
yes.
with the math. Okay. Okay, good. So the group is good at strength spotting. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then your next one was, do you purposefully avoid certain situations that cause you stress and discomfort? And 82% of the people said yes.
Ah, okay. Okay. And I think were there two questions to go along with this slide? Sorry.
That was those two, yeah.
Those two. Okay. So, and so a lot of you, sounds like, don't like exposing yourself to stress. I don't think any of us really do like signing up for that. But unfortunately, it is something that really is integral in building resilience.
Oh, there was one more question for this one, April.
Okay.
Have you ever deliberately exposed yourself to a stressor in order to get over it? And 73% said yes.
Okay. Good. Okay. So, bit of both, I guess,
Yeah.
on this question. Yeah. So avoiding stressful situations really can reduce our ability to cope with them by reinforcing our fear, reinforcing that we can't cope with them. It is really natural for us to want to avoid being uncomfortable, want to avoid being stressed. And sometimes it almost goes by without us noticing. So, for example, if you had a bad run-in with a triple bar at some point and you come in for your lesson and you start to tend to eyeball what's being set up in the ring. And every time you notice that there is a triple bar, oh, maybe today's not the day for my lesson, right? So you start to avoid the triple bar. And of course, that's a good example of what's happening is that you are gaining some temporary comfort, but you are really costing yourself in terms of confidence. Because by the time you do get to a competitive environment and one shows up, your fear is going to be 10 times the size that it was when you first had that bad experience. And the other way this builds resilience for us is going just beyond your comfort zone is really where our learning takes place. So if we keep ourselves comfortable in not very much stress and avoiding things that are uncomfortable, we're not really going to grow. We're not going to learn the way we could. However, the same is true with too much stress, because when we have too much stress, it definitely inhibits our learning. An example of that would be, let's say you are showing at in a division or at a height that you feel really uncomfortable with and feel like you don't have the skills to ride this height. But you feel like you have to do this. Your coach and everyone else around you says you can do it, but you're really just white knuckling it through it. Then learning is also not taking place, because what's really happening there is that just the white knuckling, and what you're looking to do is survive. So at the end of it, you're relieved, but you don't have any more confidence than when you started out. So we want to hit that place in the middle. Like if you were to use a scale of 1 to 10 of stress, somewhere between 4 and 6, staying in that zone so that you are able to think constructively, you're able to tolerate the discomfort, and you're able to learn. So exposing yourself to stress in a controlled manner will reveal definitely your inner Gumby. And because really the fact of the matter is, how can you practice flexibility if you don't ever need it? So this is a good thing to keep an eye on about yourself, because we are all guilty of avoiding things that are not comfortable for us. And sometimes we have to step back and go, am I doing that? Am I costing myself some learning experiences? And am I costing myself some resilience? So that is exposing yourself to stress. The third is to develop a coping mantra. And I just love this horse's expression in this photo. I don't think he or she needs any kind of coping mantra. Maybe when the rider touches down, that could be a different thing, but rider could probably use a coping mantra. So what exactly is that? Okay. So when faced with adversity, with a stressful situation, know that you will think very automatically. You're going to have automatic thoughts that probably are not going to be positive because the situation, right, is surprising. It's probably negative or could negatively impact your performance. So this is when we have, for example, making a mistake and your first thought is, well, it's all over, or I'm just going to make another mistake. These automatic thoughts come along with the stress that we feel that's generated by our fight or flight system. They're very quick and they come on us very fast, but these thoughts can also really derail us from coping. So because you can't really come up with something different to guide yourself with in a moment of stress, it can be helpful to prepare yourself to cope by getting to know what some of your automatic thoughts are in certain situations and their accompanying feelings in a more safe space. So again, this is a place where you might do like a writing activity and ask yourself, okay, in those adverse situations, or currently when I'm challenged, are there automatic thoughts that the same ones that and the feelings that just keep coming up that I've gotten to know? And then you want to look at developing a coping statement or statements and rehearse them using imagery. And I say imagery because this is a really safe place for you to start and to imagine yourself applying that coping statement in the situation. So, but you want to choose your statements carefully. You must believe them. So this isn't a task of replacing a negative thought with a positive thought, you know, like I suck with I don't suck. That's not going to help you. And that's chances are that it's not something that you're going to believe anyway. So again, using a scale from 1 to 10, and 10 with like you're all in and you completely believe it, and 1 not very much. You want to strengthen your statement of at least 7. So you want a pretty strong statement that you can believe in, that's not just a flip on your negative statement. And these can be really simple statements like, I can feel anxious and still ride. So is that a statement that, yeah, I do have some experiences in the past where I felt anxious and I've still been able to ride effectively? I do believe that. Okay, so maybe I'm going to practice with that particular coping statement and see if it can help me lead to a little bit of a new perspective, and of course a new response, including a new riding response. Another example, let's get back to the person with the triple bar phobia. Maybe something like, I have ridden approximately 365 triple bars effectively so far in my lifetime, and 1 not so good. So right now the odds are in my favor. And okay, that's likely something you can believe. It's fact-based. It also has a little bit of humor to it, which personally I like with coping statements because it lightens things. It helps. And whenever you lighten something, it also helps you get perspective. And you can come up with not just 1, but several coping statements. I was with a client not long ago, and we were actually talking about different coping statements. And also I suggested to her, you know, what about if you kind of name this challenge that's coming up? So instead of dreading, I don't know if I'm going to get through this, how am I going to get through this? Why don't you name the challenge something funny, so that instead of it coming at you, you start to turn around and feel like you're going for it. So it's my 3-week challenge, whatever it is, or you can, like I said, you can make it funny. And in that way, then what your thinking starts to pivot towards is, oh, okay, now I've got this challenge. What have I got to bring to it? So let me gather the resources, or maybe let me start asking some people what I can do with this. So it turns your mindset in the direction of starting to take action instead of waiting for something bad to happen or waiting to see whether you get through this particular stressor. So there's lots of coping statements can be actually very fun. And another name for them, I will say, some of you might have heard this before, of occupational therapists, I think in particular, use this phrase, some psychologists as well, as pocket statements. And pocket statements are statements that you develop ahead of time to say to someone in a difficult situation, for example, and they reside in your pocket until you need them, but you know that they're there. So what kind of pocket statements or coping statements can you come up with to increase your resilience? Number 4, and I think, Jessica, do we have a poll on this one?
We do.
We
It
do?
is. Have you ever used your values to guide yourself through a tough situation? And 91% said yes.
Wow. Actually, I'm going to ask if anyone wants to share a story about that.
Say if somebody wants to type in the comments or even just unmute your microphone if there is anything somebody would like to add.
Yeah.
Say I don't see anything.
Okay.
Why don't you carry on, and if something?
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So knowing and writing your values, essentially what this means is that in tough times, sometimes we get disoriented and we don't know what to ground our decision making in. And so, for example, if we look in the context of sport and we look at some of the common values that come up within sport, like teamwork, and that could mean, of course, that could mean anything from, horse and rider teamwork to also to barnmate teamwork, dedication and hard work, fair play and sportsmanship, resilience and perseverance, respect, excellence and mastery, leadership and responsibility, health and well-being, or ethical horsemanship. I think in horse sport, these are all examples of values that people may hold. And of course, there's many, many more of them. And some of your personal might come into some of the challenges that you deal with in sport. So what values can do, if we tap into them and we know what they are and what's important to us, is help guide us through a difficult situation, give us an anchor from which to make decisions. So for example, let's say you're becoming extremely frustrated because maybe there's a dressage judge that seems to have it out for you, does not like you, never scores you well. And you find yourself becoming more and more frustrated and looking as, where is this judge going to be next? Maybe I shouldn't go, these kinds of things. And it's really starting to negatively impact your showing experience. This would be an example of if part of what you value about being involved in sport, and I'll just say that, of course, a problem like that, like a judge that doesn't seem to be reading you the way that you're reading yourself, or you believe to be unfair, is of course out of your control. There's not a lot that you can do. However, if you tap into, well, what's really important to me in horse sport is, for example, excellence. I still, regardless of what kind of score I get, I want to reach for that. That's something I want to keep focused on. And also, maybe you decide, yeah, resilience is another one of the things that I want to be known for, or I want to be I want to make sure I make my decision in accordance with that value. So from that point, you start to take your focus off of that judge and put your focus back on those values and allow those to guide you forward. That would be an example of keying in and locking into your values to guide you through a resilient time. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to fix the situation. Obviously, like we said, you can't do anything about that judge. Not going to fix it, but what are you going to preserve? You're going to preserve your control over your goals and what's important to you. So Jessica, do we have anyone kind of pop up with anything more to say about values? Just
They didn't, but now that you've gone through that, I have an example myself of a
ah,
situation that, specifically in the fair play and sportsmanship one.
mm,
So this was quite a few years ago. So it was championships, and I was running with my old horse Sunny, and there wasn't very many people in the division. And so we went out on cross country, and we'd had a really good event so far, and we were going to be in the ribbons. And so we went on cross country, and we were in one part of the course where it's very treed, and so you can't see from the like one jump to the next. So there's parts where the jump judges can't see you.
yeah.
And me and my horse had a disagreement about which path in the trees to go down, and I like popped off and landed on my feet,
Oh no.
and nobody is around. And it did cross my mind for a moment, and several people came up, like when I told them afterwards, they're like, "You should have just got back on and carried on. Nobody would have known."
Oh,
But I didn't. I walked back to the jump judge, and she nearly had a heart attack when she saw me coming, and she's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine." I'm like, but I'm a big believer in like if you do come off, even if it's a silly fall, like it's just not your day. So I made that decision when the heart of sportsmanship
mhm.
that shit happens, and this was the right thing to do.
Okay. And was that, it sounds like it was a very quick and clear decision for you, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I was
and
just like, oh, I could, but nope. Like I knew, yeah, I made that decision very quickly. Yeah,
yeah,
but it
and
was
I'm
amazing how many people told me afterwards I just should have got back on. So that
yes,
was funny.
yes, because people do have different values,
Yeah,
right? But
totally.
if you had, it might have really bothered you, of course,
Yeah, it
and
would
been a
have.
negative experience for you afterwards, because you would have known
Yeah,
that you didn't
yeah.
follow your values. So there is actually, and there's a form of therapy that is based in large part on this concept, and some people might know about it, and it's called acceptance commitment therapy, or ACT. And really that the basic components of it are accepting how we feel and think about something, like just being mindfully aware of that, but then committing to whatever action we choose out of our values. So, and that's that sort of that difference between, yes, you get those first thoughts, those first automatic thoughts, or those strong feelings, but we actually can learn to watch those, know what they are, be able to acknowledge them rather than pushing them away, and then make a move to choose our actions out of our values. And yeah, if you want to know more about that, I can certainly provide some reading in that area, because it's a type of therapy that is mindfulness based, and I find very, very effective for people. Okay. Number 5 is developing mindfulness skills. And I don't know, Jessica, like if we can have even a show of hands or wave or whatever that thing is to say how many people, because what we did last year actually was to talk about mindfulness.
So yeah, if people want to, I believe if you go in, oh, on your options bar, you have an option to raise your hand.
If you were here last year and for the talk about mindfulness skills.
Yeah, raise your hand. Because I think that one was fairly well attended too. I'm
Mhm.
not sure offhand how many watches we've got on YouTube, but I think
Mhm.
last I checked, most of them were like around 50.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
um,
and of course, if you weren't here, it's certainly something that you can go to YouTube on the AHTA channel and check out, right?
All of
Yeah,
our amazing talks.
yeah.
Um,
So,
do you
yes,
see,
last year, sorry,
do you see hands, April?
I um I can see if I think a few, like
Okay,
Kathleen, yeah, yeah.
because for some reason I can't see them, so that's good. You can.
Okay,
Okay, yeah. So we
okay,
got a handful who have watched it. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a
yeah,
really excellent one too.
okay. So mindfulness skills are very helpful in raising your resilience factor. And the reason for that is mindfulness, and just to just go back to describing what mindfulness practice or mindfulness skills are in a nutshell, is mindfulness helps us to train us to focus on the present moment. So instead of being in our heads or sort of partially partially in our heads and partially with our horses, it helps to train our present moment awareness to what's happening in the here and now. And of course, that makes us more able to respond to what's happening in the here and now. And it also, part of mindfulness is about learning to not non-judgmentally be aware of your thoughts and your feelings. So without jumping to try and change them, and learning that a thought is not you and a thought is not an action, and that we will all have negative thoughts for the rest of our lives, and to eradicate them is really impossible. So mindfulness looks at, again, how can we train ourselves to be present in the moment, so that, and also open to what's happening in the moment is part of that. So being curious, and where this comes in handy with a challenging or novel situation that gets thrown in your face, is that if you do have mindfulness-based skills and you know how to bring yourself back to that moment, you're more likely to be able to stick with and give a response to it, instead of go into the go into sort of a collapse mode. So it gives you resilience in being able to literally, let me find some skills to deal with this, let me stay with this. And the non-judgmental acceptance of the feelings and emotions, where that helps us is, I think all riders know very well about the concept of self-regulation, like physiological self-regulation, in the sense of we're all going to experience stress, and we want to be aware of where we are emotionally, where we are in our fight or flight system. So, and how to regulate if we are in fight or flight, for example, and we're getting past that place of being able to think constructively, body's going crazy, to know how to have that awareness and be able to apply some skills to get ourselves back into a state where we can function again. And mindfulness really helps with this as well, because again, there's a lot of observation that goes along with mindfulness. There's a lot of get to know yourself observation of thoughts, feelings, states, that is so helpful when the chips are down. And the same with what the cognitive flexibility in mindfulness is about, is when we learn to really be observers of our thoughts, and learn that our thoughts are not us, and our thoughts, as I said, are not our actions. They're just thoughts, and we have billions of them a day. We're able to show some flexibility in our perspective, and subsequently in our choice of action, because we know this. We know that thoughts are thoughts, and they don't necessarily have to dictate how we act. And we can maybe be flexible about it. To go back to, developing a coping statement is an example of cognitive flexibility, because what we're trying to train ourselves, encourage ourselves to do, is to take a slightly different perspective that is still believable, that can lead us in a different direction. So not to repeat the same thing over and over again. And, you know, we all know that physically, like riding, we can repeat bad habits mindlessly over and over again. And we can unfortunately do the same thing mentally. So every time you make a mistake, you beat yourself up. Next time you make a mistake, you beat yourself up. And so you're responding in a really cognitively inflexible way to that particular stressor, that particular problem. Cognitive flexibility and fostering that through mindfulness-based skills helps us to start to widen our perspective, to be more creative with our problem solving, to find new ways of approaching old problems. And all of this, and it makes sense, can help us to become more flexible. Does anyone actually, Jessica, are there any questions popping up about mindfulness? Or does anyone have a question about mindfulness?
Not in the chat at this time, but if somebody does have a question, feel free to unmute your mic and ask away.
And if not, we can also deal with those questions at the end. So we'll just keep going to the last one, which is called Find Your People. So in the description, when Jessica asked me to prepare a description about this talk, one of the things I said is, well, maybe you'll find a new source of resilience that you hadn't really thought of before for yourself to mine. And I chose this one because actually I found some new and emerging research that focuses on something called relational resilience. And that is about finding our resilience through other people. So resilience is not just this thing that you got to pull out of yourself. It's not just accessed way deep down in there that you got to chip out. It can be found in your connections with others. And this is what these researchers term relational resilience. And I think in our individualistic centered culture, sometimes we don't give enough time and consideration to how much other people can help us and we can help others. And I thought this was a really important concept and bit of research to bring forward tonight, that all of resilience isn't built just by yourself. It really can be found in your relationships with others. And so what these researchers looked at is, okay, within the relationships that you have or that you want to foster, what kind of people do you need? What kind of people are going to make a difference in your life, in your sport? And so there's many different types of resources of resilience from different people. For example, so maybe you need help with laughing and lightening up situations. Maybe you need some people like that in your life. I think most of us that are perfectionists or prone to that kind of thinking can really benefit from people like that in our perspective and having those people on our team, so to speak. People that help maintain perspective when setbacks happen. So some people are really, really good at just feeding you back a wider perspective or different perspective on what's happened to you that can help you from becoming too narrow in your outlook after something challenging, has happened. It can be those that help you see a path forward. So maybe something's happened and you're thinking, I'm not going to come back from this. I don't have a vision for the future. I don't know where to go. And some people are really good about guiding you and helping you see that there could be a path or more than one path forward. There are those that provide safety for the release of negative emotions. And I think, hope that you've all had someone like this in your life. Sometimes they're our best friends. So people that are really able to give us the space to just complain or release a negative emotion or cry or do whatever. There are those that remind us of our purpose in sport. This could be a coach, this could be a teammate, this could be someone that you admire that you don't even know, but actually gain some resilience from reading about and get to know that way. There are those that can help us make sense of unfairness. We know that sport and life carries with it a certain amount of unfairness. And, that's sort of to get back to that idea of one of the first things we want to do is check on our mindset that it does include the concept of unfairness, because we are going to run into it. Crappy things are going to happen to all of us, some bigger, some smaller, and a lot that we can't control. Those that help you find your confidence to push back or to communicate or stand up for yourself in some way. There are people that are really good with helping you choose words to do that. If you need to communicate with someone, communicate with your coach, and you don't know where to start, that source of support can make a real difference for some people. And there are those that help with physical efforts, extra work. So let's say you're right, what you're going through is you're coming back from an injury or you're not feeling very well. And there's people you could use some help with just the effort of getting the stuff done. So there's many different types of relational resources. However, it is something that we need to cultivate. We need to cultivate, another word for it is to cultivate your go-to people. And one way you can do this is look at that and think about, look at your top sources of relational resources that you think would make the biggest impact or difference to you in your life. Oops. And be intentional about developing connections. And some of these connections might be right in front of you. And you might not have thought about it until this moment. You might kind of be going through this Rolodex in your mind of the people that you know and the people that are around you. And even just naming like, yes, that person is this kind of source of resilience for me. I'm glad to have them on my team. Whoops. Okay. And don't rule out sources outside of sport. A relational source, it does not have to be someone that knows one end of a horse from another, really. Sometimes friends that don't know about horses and don't know anything about them doesn't mean that they can't offer perspective, doesn't mean that they can't be a different source of resilience for you or help you with a particular source of resilience. And of course, you want to consider what you may offer to someone else. You want to be reciprocal. You want to give to get. And there might even be, and this can connect back to your values, actually, very much so. It might be that you decide that you want to be a particular source of support or resilience for the people in your life in a certain way. I know that there's some people that really do enjoy sharing their humor, for example, to help lighten difficult situations. They enjoy it, they're known for it, and it's a value of theirs, and the people around them appreciate it. So it can, what you have to give can go back to, well, what kind of person do I want to be in this sport, and what do I want to be able to give? Another way in which other people make us resilient is that they actually provide what's called a protective factor. So if we look at stress in any domain, so we all have protective and risk factors. And having people around us that are supportive, just having people around is considered to be a protective factor against stress and against, we could even say, the development of a mental health concern or the increase of one. It's a very important protective factor that I think sometimes we don't pay enough attention to. And within individual sports, it can be something that we also forget about, but is equally as important. And did we have a poll on that one, Jessica? I think we
Uh,
did.
yeah, we did. So the last question on the poll was, do your relationships help you have more resilience? And 95% said yes. And I totally agree.
Okay. Awesome. And it's good to see it reflected in the research. And so to close, I just want to say this, that remember that when we talked about at the beginning of what is the face of resilience. So can a person be resilient and crying? Can a person be resilient and angry or sad or any of those things? And I think yes. The face of resilience is for sure not pretending to feel good. So denying what you feel, because when we do that, we actually create more fragility inside if we deny what we're feeling and we don't work with it. It's about accepting what you are feeling and moving forward, even if it's a millimeter, even if it's a small, small distance. And on that, actually on that note of, the face of resilience and remembering that it's important to acknowledge and do something with those feelings. There's BC Firefighters has such a good campaign, and in it they have these visual images, and I should have got one for you guys, but because I do work with a lot of first responders, of faces with writing all over them, and the campaign is share it, don't wear it. Because that's certainly a place, another, within the community of first responders, where sometimes as it is in sport, it's like, buck up, don't talk about what you're feeling, don't say that, move on. And again, I think resilience sometimes has been made to be about that. Well, just don't talk about it. You're tougher if you just shut up and move on. But there are a lot of good things about being able to acknowledge and to share your feelings. One of them is certainly greater mental health, right? And I believe greater resilience, because you are not carrying all of that inside. And that can really reduce, like I said, your resilience. If that's what's happening, it can cause, like I said, further fragility, a sense of fragility inside. So moving forward, if it's a millimeter, means that you have more capacity for the next time. And that means the face of resilience is yours, right? If you do that. So resilience, to me, there is a great deal to be said about it being about capacity and building and watching your capacity for adversity, and whether your tank is running low and whether you need to pay some attention to your resilience and add to that by doing any number of the things that we just talked about. But one way to think about it is it's something that you carry with you. It can run out, and it needs care, and it needs some acknowledgement and tracking to see where you are in terms of your capacity to deal with challenging things. And it really, and again, the good news is that resilience is absolutely learnable, and you can increase it. You can increase your capacity. So, excuse me. So thanks for tuning in. and wondering if you have any questions about any of that or anything that you'd like to add. And this is where Jessica can unmic some people and make them real.
To make somebody talk.
Exactly.
Amazing. Thank you, April. That was great. Yeah, I think the relationship resilience, like with the friends and things, that's really important. Like I know at some events, like we've all had those events where we fall off or miss a fence or something, and I've really found it helpful when other people came up and was like, "Wow, that really sucked. You know, I missed a fence too last year, and I really thought it was really dumb, but you know what? It happens to everybody, and we'll just move on, and you'll get her next time." Like I find like that sort of stuff is helpful, and it's an easy thing for us to do too if we see somebody who's having a bit of a rough go or if something happens. Because sometimes
Yeah.
people don't want to bring it up and be like, "Well, you'll never guess what I did. That really sucked and I screwed up." But if you see it happen, sometimes those words can be really helpful for a
For
person.
sure. Because I think what you're doing in that moment is you're saying, you know what, you're not alone.
Mhm. Absolutely. Everybody's had.
We kind of all belong to
a-
this human race.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially with horses, something always happens. So
exactly.
yeah. If
That's just
anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to write
part
it in
of
the chat or pop your video on and ask. You can ask April anything about resilience, mindfulness, or any other mental skills questions. Um, I don't see anything right now, so I'll just quickly remind everybody this webinar has been recorded and it will go up on our AHTA YouTube. It's just under Alberta Horse Trials, and we do have all of our other webinars we've done over the past few years up on there too, several of which are April's. So if you guys want to check those out, that would be awesome. And we're also planning another webinar with our vet person, Dr. Sarah Peterson, who has also done a couple talks for us. And that is in the works still for at some point in the spring. And we will post when that is arranged. We have a few people saying thank you in the chat. Oh, Mariah has a question. She says, "I just had a bad accident with my new horse and I'm really struggling to come back to horses. Any advice?"
so bad accident in terms of being hurt
Mariah,
or
do you want to, would
yeah,
you
do you want
mind
to unmic?
popping on, yeah, unmute, and do you want to elaborate a little bit if you feel
Yeah,
comfortable? If not,
yeah,
that's okay too.
Yeah.
yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, so I just got a new horse recently, like in December, and had him for about a month and a half, and was just kind of, working up confidence and working with him. And I mean, new environment, stuff like that. But um, yeah, there was a situation where it got warm above zero, and like there was some ice that kind of slid off the roof of the barn, and he had a big spook. And then after that, like he was holding a lot more tension, anxiety. Anyway, we had a lesson, and then in the lesson he bucked me off, and broke my I broke my collarbone and have a concussion. And yeah, I've just been really struggling. Like I've been in recovery for the last few months, but like I also am a coach, and I'm a new coach, and I'm just like kind of generally just struggling to be like,
That,
and even see pictures of horses sometimes. I'm like, oh, this is hard, and it like brings up all these emotions and stuff. So I was
yeah.
just wondering if you had some like general advice for being like, rehabbing or trying to like be patient through, yeah, just like,
And coming back, because that's, yeah, and I think I'll bet you a lot of people can relate. I myself, I certainly can, that coming back from an accident and an injury like that can seem overwhelming, when you're first staring it down. Certainly. Are you able to ride yet at all, or you're not there yet?
yeah, they said not, like the surgeon said like probably not 3 to 4 months.
Mm.
So it'll be a while, and I'm not like upset about that. I'll probably do like groundwork and things like that, but I think it's just in general, like even going to the barn and being like, oh, I'm worried, people are going to ask me about the accident or things like that.
Mhm. And well, so I think you know, with sort of with a coming back from an injury like this and still you know, doing your rehab, as you said, I think my best advice is to start to develop a plan for yourself, like a step-by-step plan, because it really can be overwhelming. And there's going to be like there's a certain phase that you're going through right now, right? Which is rehab. You're going through healing. And part of that is, you know, finding out how this accident impacted you, how you're feeling, um, uh, seeing how you feel just being around, right, horses now at this stage. And then you're going to have another phase, right, where you're going to start doing, I think, probably more physical rehab and maybe starting to look to slowly making your way back on a horse. And so thinking of this in stages, I find is really, really helpful for people, rather than I had an accident, now I have to get back to where I was. And to respect where you are and identify what the needs of the particular phase that you're in. So, and definitely you can seek help with doing that, like with a good physio, with someone like myself to help you also with the psychological steps of getting back. And here's another place where I'd say it is important to acknowledge what you're feeling and to use that, right, as information to move forward, rather than to feel like you need to hide that. I know you mentioned something about talking to people at the barn. I'm not sure what specifically what that fear is about, or if you feel comfortable talking about it. That's
Sorry, my phone was being weird. Yeah, I think it's just kind of, yeah, not really processing it enough yourself. So, you know, after a long time after something happens, it's easier to talk about, but when you're kind of in it, it's
a little bit disorienting. And I think that's a good place for you to develop, you go back to that coping statement or the pocket statement, is coming up with something that you can say at this point. And it might be, I'm not sure about how I'm feeling about everything. I'm really focused on healing right now and really looking after myself so that I can maximize my rehabilitation. Might be something like that, but just that can take a lot of stress off. Again, those pocket statements or those coping statements, because you know, okay, this is my truth right now. This is how I can respond. Is that helpful?
yeah, totally. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mariah, are you from Whitehorse? Are you the Mariah I met up there and you rode with me?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's the same Jessica. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
It's
awesome.
very like, oh yeah, you've ridden with me before. Yeah, it's a new horse from the one that you rode
Right.
with
Yeah,
me.
that I saw. Yeah. Your name spelled very uniquely, so I'm like, I wonder if that's the same girl. No, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
you
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for putting this on. It's so great
Yeah.
for like the digital platform. So awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you could join us. I'm sorry you had a bad accident, and I hope you, yeah, heal up and get back at it soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions or anything before we wrap it up?
And
There's
I will say a little bit of that kind of like the riding through fear online course. And so I've given everyone here a code for the next 5 days that like, so all the courses like end up being around $28, I think, with but the riding through fear does lead you through different steps and can be helpful coming back from an accident. I know it's on my radar to develop one that just has to do with kind of the whole package of how do you negotiate coming back and rehabbing after a serious accident. So it's on my radar.
Perfect. No, and thank you for this offer, April. That is great. I will also send this offer out when I send the recording
Great.
of the webinar. Email it to everybody, and hopefully some people will take advantage.
Yeah. Just-
Okay. Okay, I don't see anything else in the chat. So I think we're probably good to wrap it up. Thanks again to Kathleen for organizing this, and thank you to April for taking time out of her busy schedule to do another amazing talk.
Well, and thank you guys
Pauline,
for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Pauline says, thank you so much. Another great topic. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, and more thank yous. Yeah, awesome.
Great.
Yeah,
And,
thank you,
and
everybody.
Jessica, could you save me the chat just so if
Yes.
questions in there and stuff that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That
The
would be awesome.
Zoom saves it, so I can send that to you.
Perfect.
Sweet.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to, is here tonight that wasn't comfortable, asking a question, but has a question, feel free to shoot me an email.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything else. So I think we are good to wrap it up. Thank you again to everybody for joining us. And thank you to April. Thank you to Kathleen. And I hope everybody has a good evening. And we will see you guys soon in another webinar, I'm sure.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, guys. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.